Here we are again on another episode of Doc Travels here on Dave Doc DIY, where we take a slight break from our regular DIY tips and home improvement, and we go on a little trip with the Doc family. Now, if you can't tell from those towers over there, they say Hershey on them. We are in Hershey, PA, and we're here at Hersheypark for their special CandyLane that they do. It is awesome. They do a bunch of Christmas theming throughout the park, holiday theming, and this goes on pretty much throughout the winter. You can go on their website and check their hours, but Hersheypark is pretty much cooking up until the new year, which is pretty impressive on their end, I have to say. Now, if you couldn't tell from my first clip, it gets really impressive as it starts to get dark out because Hershey puts a ton of theming everywhere. And of course, right when you walk into the park, you're greeted by Candemonium and what's usually a very large Hershey Kiss fountain. Actually, in this angle, you're going to be able to see that the fountain's a little higher than it was when I filmed my first clip. It was a little bit windy out, so those are the small things that you might see difference-wise from when the park's open in the summer compared to this. And we had to get a little bit of coffee, so if you're worried about coffee, there's a Starbucks right when you walk into Hersheypark. Now, you might be looking around here and saying, wow, there's really not that many people here. Hershey kind of has like a grand entrance where it's kind of like a one-way road to get to your intersections of the park. And as you can see there's special Christmas shops that they open. And oh yeah, Disney is not the only place that has a monorail. Move aside, Disney. Hersheypark has one too. Here you can see the Comet and the Sky Rush are closed for the winter, but Wildcats Revenge is not. And I had to take a solo trip over there just to ride it because the kids just aren't ready for this one. I mean, just look at that roller coaster. It is, in my opinion, one of my favorite roller coasters I've ever been on in my life. I think it's one of the most impressive roller coasters to also look at and just see the craftsmanship on it. And as you saw earlier, you had Comet closed, you have Sky Rush closed, the Great Bear was closed, but there's a lot to do here. I mean, I could rattle off a couple coasters that were closed, but you have Wildcats Revenge open, you have Coco Cruiser for the kids, Super Duper Looper was still open, the racing coasters in the back, which their name I'm drawing a blank on right now, those were not open as well, but there is so much to do, especially for a park that's staying open in the wintertime in an area where the climate is not that warm, but you can still have a good time in the park, which they accommodate for. It's impressive how much they have open. Most of the family rides here are open. The only thing you're going to see is a couple coasters aren't running. As you can see in the background there, Fahrenheit, that is another one that was not open. But as we start to get darker here, you can start to see some of this theming really coming to life, and it starts to get really impressive in a minute or two here. Here's another pop-up shop here that you can see. It's Prancer's Presents, so they're really going all in on the theming. Now we're going to start to get to some of the really good stuff. At the train, they went all in. It's probably the most Christmas lights I've ever seen in one spot, and it's actually a hard lesson that I learned when we were here. If you want to see some of the best things at nighttime, right when it starts to get dark out, get in line for that monorail, get in line for the train, because the crowds might not seem like they were too crazy in this video, but man, I'll tell you what, that train line filled up really quick, and the monorail line at nighttime when it was kind of just like a, hey, we're going to leave the park now, let's just go hit the monorail real quick. We went over to that line and we did not wind up going on the monorail because the kids were kind of at the end of their line at that point. But those are things that I would tell anyone if you're planning on going to this to work it into your plans. Right when you start to see those lights start to get to the perfect point, get in line for those rides. Another thing you'll see here in Hershey's showroom area in the middle of the park, they actually have pictures that you can get with Mr. Hershey and Mr. Reese's there. You just wait in line down the candy cane lane, and it's pretty cool. Now back to the train area. Again, this is where they just went all out. And as we kept walking along the train tracks here, we just kept seeing more. And we even got a really cool shot that you're going to see here in a minute where I don't know what was going on here, but Santa was walking down the train tracks, and I'm telling you now, the kids were fired up to see it. It was a pretty cool special moment. As you can see here, he even waved to my son right there. It was really just kind of one of those things that I know the kids aren't going to forget. So if you're wondering if you're going to get those types of memories from coming to this CandyLane here at Hersheypark, you're going to. Now we're going to work on to the back end of the park, which in my opinion had the best lights in the entire park, as we're walking along to the Comet here. And as you can see, Chick-fil-A also isn't dropping the ball with their theming, because they even got some lights up on the cow right here. You know, they're not messing around. Hershey did not skip any steps when they themed this up for this. But working back here past the Comet, you're going to see the trees that are lit up here, and it was just awesome. We were in this area for a while. My wife and son, I refused to go on it, went on the swings. I'll go on any roller coaster you want. I'll go on any type of thrill ride. I don't mess with those swings. The lights here would change from color to white, and it was just such a cool thing to see. It really highlights a lot of the nice trees and everything that Hersheypark has throughout it. I mean, Hershey is an underrated park. I'm telling you right now, I've been to a lot of theme parks, and Hershey really does push its way up on the list. They don't mess around. Now, coming up on the Super Duper Looper here, as you can see, plenty more theming. All of the fences have the lights on them and everything. The roller coaster does as well. You can also see the Christmas tree on top of the tower ride that they have, which I can't even imagine the guys who go and put the lights up there. That's insane. Can't imagine that. Here's a little good view of the Super Duper Looper cruising by. And there's also some construction going on here. It's actually for one of those really large swing rides they're doing. I'm pretty sure it's a Twizzler themed one, and you can see the Great Bear. Keep your eye out for this light show when you're crossing the bridge in this area, because these lights go so far back, and it is a crazy light show to see. I can't imagine the work that went into building this. And as we're heading out of the park, here's another view of one of their special Christmas shops that we saw earlier in the video. There's a lot of good stuff in there. You got to get a Christmas ornament or something to remember the trip. You have a manger scene right outside of it, which was really nice. My kids thought that was pretty cool. So Hershey hits on everything. Now, if you plan on eating at the Chocolatier while you're here, which is the restaurant that's at the front of the park, which we ate there last year, great little restaurant, great Hershey theming, you should schedule that in advance. We did not schedule it, which we're usually good schedulers, but we didn't know what our day was going to look like. So we tried to just get a seat up there, and it was like, yeah, that's not happening. But they do have an outdoor seating area where you can kind of just go and get appetizers and drinks. They had the heating fans going on out there. They had fireplace areas. They had the Grinch playing. So overall, it was just an excellent experience. So just wrapping this up here, I'm going to say I have no stake in this. Hershey's not giving me anything to say all of this stuff. I've paid for this trip just as I've paid for every Hershey trip, because we're here in PA. It's such an easy ride for us to go with the kids. There's plenty of rides in the park for your kids to maybe even have that first ride experience if you haven't been to a theme park with them. They have great stuff around for this Christmas-themed CandyLane. So if you're on the fence about going and you're around this area, I'm telling you now, it's totally worth going. You're going to have a great time. Depending on the weather, I mean, I could see how if it's really cold out, might not be the best, but yeah. This is another episode of Doc Travels in the books. I appreciate you guys following Dave Doc DIY, and if you ever need any homeowner or DIY plumbing tips, hit that follow button, and maybe even a travel video. Thanks for watching.